Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's recap video. I don't have any special announcements or anything I need to talk about before I get into the questions. No giveaway winners or anything from this past week. However, we do have a really fun giveaway coming up like in the next couple of days. So be watching for that. So I'm just going to jump right into the first video from this week, which was titled My Experience with Foxglove. So in that video, I had just posted a picture of our beautiful Dalmatian peach foxglove that I started from seed this past winter. And I talked in the post about like how easy it is to grow. And there were a ton of questions. So whenever that happens, I always feel like, ooh, okay, we should put together a video. I should just talk about my experience here and answer some of those questions. So I hope it was helpful. Foxgloves are so beautiful, and I'm surprised by how easy they are to grow from seed. First question was from Lacey. Can these seeds be seeded directly into the garden, or do they have to be nurtured through the process you used? If so, when should the seeds be put into the garden? So starting seeds inside early for foxglove is the recommended way to do it, and it's usually 10 to 12 weeks before you plant them out. And I think the reason for that is because you're not supposed to cover them with anything. They need light in order to germinate. So to maintain the proper amount of moisture levels to get them to come up is a lot easier when you have them inside and you've got like a controlled environment. Outside, like you get one windy night, it just saps the moisture from around the seeds and you could lose them that way. If you want to direct seed them, you can seed them as soon as the soil can be worked in the spring. I mean, you don't have to be past a frost or anything like that because they are a fairly tough perennial. However, like Mother Nature, like if you get a foxglove to come up and bloom in your garden and you let it go to seed, they'll just spread themselves around and some of them will come up sometimes. Some people have really good luck. I typically do, and some people don't. So, you know, once you get one going in your garden, you may find that like they direct seed and they just kind of do their own thing without you having to do a thing. Lisa said, how do you gather the seeds? I have one plant and love it, but have no idea how to gather the seeds. So I just wait until the stalk is looking pretty dried out, and you can kind of like shake it and you can hear the seeds inside the, like where the blooms were. And then I just get a pan, like a cake pan, 9x13, and just gently tap the seed, the stalk in there, and all the seeds release. They are tiny. So whenever I get foxglove seeds, like the ones I started, they were pelletized, which means they're coated with something to make them a little bit bigger, so they're a little bit easier to handle. Even when they're pelletized, they're tiny. So yeah, they're interesting, but easy to gather seeds. You just tap them into a pan, and then you can put them in an envelope and save them. Diana said, what's the name of the purple flowers? Oh no, Supertunia Indigo Charm was what I planted there. So it's Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo Charm. Trust Sasu said, would you ever consider starting a podcast? Would be perfect to listen to in the sun in the summer. I haven't considered doing that. Aaron, I think you would be good at that. You listen to podcasts. I don't listen to any podcasts at all. I find my brain like wandering way off like 2 minutes in. I like cannot focus on something like that because I've just got too many things rolling. I have focus issues. I'd do one if you did it with me. I think I would need somebody who could take the reins and like MC it.
Sure.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
I think that I would need that because I think that I would just like wander and then we'd never be able to title the podcast anything.
However, we have no time for a podcast, so something else would have to give.
That's true. Yeah. Scheduling, time-wise, podcast is kind of out. However, if we ever get a studio built somewhere that has air conditioning, it would be a nice thing to do in the heat of the summer because like I did a video real early, kind of early this morning, and now it's 100 degrees outside, and in here it feels like it's 100 degrees in here. Anyway, AC would be nice. Last question from that video, is it possible you do a video explaining which flowers are generally poisonous? Yeah. You know, there's a garden is it in Ireland or Scotland? It's like all poisonous plants. I can't remember what it's called. I'm going to Google it. Hold on. It's like a really interesting looking garden. I would love to visit it sometime. The Poison Garden, the Alnwick Garden, which is it's in northeast England. Home to the Duke of Northumberland's family and Harry Potter themed events. That would be an excellent place to do a Harry Potter themed event, somewhere where there's a poison garden. I've never really put together a video or a list of plants that are toxic or poisonous. It's not something that's usually on my radar because it's not something I worry about ever, but it's definitely something interesting. Okay, next video is trying to save our tree that split. So we have a honey locust tree in our Versailles garden that split right down the center of the trunk that we discovered just like 10 days ago or something like that. Anyway, like knee-jerk reaction, we thought, well, we got to remove the tree. But then we got to looking at it, and one, I'm not ready to lose that tree because it's a huge like shade provider, and it's a huge part of the structure of that garden, and that would bum me out hard. And usually losing stuff doesn't bum me out that much, but that tree would. So we were looking at it, and we noticed that both sides of the tree still look perfectly healthy. And we thought, well, you know, maybe there's something we can do. So I started poking around on the internet and found some videos on cabling trees, and then Aaron kind of took that and ran with it, did a bunch of research. He got all the pieces and parts we needed to do the project. He did it. He cabled the whole tree together because I can't like get up in the ladders and stuff like that. I was his assistant handing him tools, but so far so good. Everything looks good. We had a really high windstorm the other night after we cabled it, and everything still looks great. So, and our arborist came by. He watched the video, and he came by and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to check up on your work. Just watch the video. I want to go see what you guys did. So he went in there, and when he came and found me, I was still out working in the garden, and he was like, you know what, don't tell Aaron this, but he did a better job than I probably would have done cabling that tree. So that was a huge boost in confidence in what we had done, and I feel like we did all we can do to save this tree. Now we'll just give it time and see what happens. Katie said, I'm praying with you. Thank you. I do have a question. Since there's now a crack for insects to easily enter the trunk of the tree, is it urgent that you will need to treat for that possibility? No. Locust trees, well, the arborist, I asked him that question. I said, is there anything I need to do to prevent moisture from entering or insects from entering? He said, no, there's nothing that you can do to save or help prevent or anything like that in terms of moisture or insects. I totally lost my train of thought. Hold on just a second. Where was I going with that?
Pregnancy brain?
No, just my brain. I don't think I have a good excuse. Oh, this is what I was going to say. In our area, we have to treat willows and birch trees and oftentimes lilacs for borers once a year with a systemic insecticide. That's something we might consider doing for that tree. Locusts, sometimes some people treat those too, but I typically haven't had any issues with borers and locust trees. Like, I scoured that tree. I looked over to see if there was any issues going on. I couldn't find anything. No insect issues, no disease issues going on. But it's something we might do just so that I know that tree has something on board. We'll do that after the tree is done, kind of with its bloom in the spring, so that it doesn't have it on board strong when pollinators are wanting to feed on it. Anyway, so it's something we may consider doing next spring, but I'm not super worried about it. Jackson said, what is the benefit of drilling hooks into the tree to pull it as compared to looping the wire around the branch, especially if you use something to distribute, mercy, the pressure of the wire more evenly, such as a hose or a tube? Also, is this intended to ever be removed or remain permanent? So Aaron said that he researched a bunch of different ways, and that he said there's a ton of different ways you can do it. Not a ton, like a handful of different ways that you can treat something like that. And there are specialty straps you can buy, but it's a specialty item that you have to order. And we were kind of urgent. Like, we get windstorms just like that. Like, it can be a completely still day. There's no wind on the forecast, and all of a sudden we get 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And you just never know when it's going to hit. And so we were like, we gotta handle this now. So he did the hardware store approach, where he knew he could get all of the pieces and parts he needed to do it then. And we followed a This Old House DIY video, which I feel like This Old House is fairly legit. And they do research projects and get professionals to like weigh in. And so I feel fairly confident in the way we did it. And the fact that the arborist said, good job, made me feel good too. But I'm not sure, is it intended to be removed at any point? No. It's just going to stay.
It won't grow over the top, but it'll scar over the top to where you don't really see it.
Okay, so Aaron said it'll scar over the top of like the bolts and all of that.
Trees don't heal, but they'll create like bark.
Well, you've seen like trees that lean up against like a metal fence, and they like envelop the metal fence eventually. Or like if you leave your tree staked too long, and they'll start to grow over like the strap that you use to lash it to the stake. Anyway, so it'll do something like that. Clusen said, maybe also pour some fungicide and tree wound treatment into the split to reduce chance of rot starting. Nope, we just left it dry, which I guess is the best way to do it. Bonnie said, what kind of saw is that can cut through a bolt or rod? That was our reciprocating saw, DeWalt reciprocating saw, and we just had a metal blade on it. There's nothing special about it, was there? Just a metal blade. When you're looking at blades, typically when you see a metal cutting blade, it's a very fine-toothed, and a wood cutting blade is kind of jagged, like it has big blades on it. Bahamian Lily said, should you also lighten the load of the tree by trimming back heavy branches while it recoups? Yes. That was one thing that our arborist said. You should probably bring the canopy up. You should probably cut some of the branches out because that's why it split in the first place. It's got too much weight going on. So that's something that we are going to do. We haven't yet. Okay, next video was the mini garden tour. In that video, we just thought the areas in front of the chicken coop and the brick circle area, they look really good right now. And we thought, let's just do a mini tour of this area. We didn't have time at that point to put together a full garden tour, so it kind of worked out really perfectly. Brienne said, love the mini tour. How can you tell the Angelonia is suffering from a water issue rather than iron deficiency? I think it's because nothing else in that bed is showing any kind of stress. I think the Angelonia is just, I don't know, it's a look. I don't know how to say that. Like, it's the whole.
When you say it.
Yeah, it's like you garden long enough and you can look at something and be like, that has chlorosis, or like, nope, I'm giving that, it's waterlogged. I'm giving it way too much water. And maybe for that area, I kind of knew because that area gets too much water, we thought last year. And we thought we got to back this off because I had Supertunia Bordeaux. Was that last year I had Bordeaux in there? I can't even remember. Anyway, it suffered on the edge and we thought, oh, we need to adjust the water. Well, we didn't. So I think the Angelonia is just getting a little bit too much.
But the hydrangeas look great.
Yeah, the hydrangeas and the play in the blues, the gomphrena even, which is a drought-tolerant plant, it is starting to have a scent.
Is it?
I can smell it now. Somebody on the video, I was talking about the scent of the gomphrena, and they're like, gomphrena doesn't have a smell. This one does. I don't know what it is. I grew other gomphrena from seed, and I don't notice any smell. It's got something in it, like that maybe our water or soil brings out in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tina said, everything is beautiful. I'm wondering about the roses. Do you have any thornless varieties from PW? The Oh So Easy Peachy Keen are so pretty. What are the thorns like? Minimal. I don't know that Proven Winters has any thornless roses that I'm aware of. But I haven't noticed them being a huge problem. Like, we have At Last roses, Italian Ice, Paprika, Peachy Keen. What other ones do we have? Yeah, I don't really notice any big issue in terms of them being really full of thorns. Now, let me tell you, I have some climbing Colette roses. If you want a thorny rose, plant some of those. They are gorgeous, and I love the flowers, so I put up with the thorns, but they're one of the worst ones to work on. So full of thorns. Nat said, what is the tree in front of the chicken coop called? Are you talking about the big one, I'm guessing? I don't think I talked about that. That is an Avalanche birch. It grows 50 feet tall by I think 35 or 40 feet wide, and I planted it there because we have an ash tree in our driveway, which I'm not sure that we showed you in the video, which does provide a little bit of shade for the chicken coop at the very end of the day, but it's like slowly been dying since we moved in, and I don't want to lose the tree, but like half of it always looks really sad every year. And so I planted that one to hopefully grow up and get big and create shade for the chicken coop, so by the time the ash finally bites the dust, we'll hopefully have some shade in place. Zachary said, I wish that was my garden. It looks so great. Thank you. I've seen past videos and heard you say that you don't like the bricks there or something. If you ever redo that area, would you keep that raised bed? I don't know. Do you think we would keep it? It's a really interesting area. That whole brick patio apparently has a concrete pad underneath it. I haven't found it. We don't dig there. So
yeah, I'd love to rip the whole thing out and do something.
Yeah, Aaron would just clear the whole thing out, which we probably will. We'll probably clear the whole area out, as well as the entire area that leads up to our back, like sun porch, kitchen kind of area, because our driveway, like where we park there, is super weird, and the sidewalks are really skinny, and we would like to redo it to where it looks more, there's more of an ease about it. Right now it's very kind of chunked up, oddly. So I don't know. Well, it's down the road a ways before we do something there. Unless Aaron gets a hold of it, makes some decisions without me. He would have the whole place torn up in 1 year and then slowly start putting it back together, and I don't move that fast. Romy said, I forgot what fertilizer you recommend for established white hydrangea. So I use two different ones. I've used Hollytone in the past and Rosetone. Both are excellent fertilizers. Did I use Rosetone this spring? I think I did. Or Hollytone. I can't remember. Kind of go back and forth, whatever I have on hand. works really well. I mean, rose tone is for woody shrubs that flower, and holly tone is more of like an acid-based fertilizer, which we have very alkaline soil, so I find that the hydrangeas react really good to that one. So it might not be something you use if you have high acid soil anyway. A fertilized hydrangea is better than a non-fertilized hydrangea, we'll just say that. Okay, next video is the fountain was disgusting. I have a fountain, 3-tier Kensington, Grand Kensington 3-tier fountain from Henry's studio, and I let it get bad. Some things have been slipping through the cracks this year with everything that's gone on this spring, and that fountain, we got it up and running early spring and I hadn't touched it since, and it was full of algae, nastiness. Got it all cleaned up, gave a update of the Gara in the area, and I like it so much better now. First comment is from Ties. I always see comments on how you spend so much money on the garden and that's not helpful, but let me share my 2 cents because I had a glass of wine and I'm in the mood to. I live in Brazil. As far away from Oregon as you can be, I can't buy most of the things you show even if I wanted to, and I would buy the Proven Winter stuff if they delivered here, believe me. But you inspire me so much to go out and clean my garden and plant stuff and grow from seed and prune everything. And my garden is probably 1/500th of yours. Haha, I don't compare. I just enjoy seeing you take such good care of your garden. That inspired me to do the same here with what I have, even if our seasons aren't the same, or our weather aren't the same, or our budget aren't the same. So if people take the time to comment negative stuff here, it just shows how limited they are. You always throw in some real nice ones. That really is a mood lifter. Erin picks out all these questions and I don't read them prior to the video because we feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's like more authentic. I just have to answer like right now. And so Erin throws in nice ones like that, and that was really sweet. That was a really wonderful comment, and it makes me so happy because nothing we do I expect anybody to emulate. I mean, I watch some people's stuff or look at their estate homes that are absolutely gorgeous, and I'm like, oh, I could never do that. You know, there's no way I could fit that into where we live or the style of our home or our budget or any of that stuff. But I enjoy watching it. It inspires me and it makes me want to create a prettier space. And so that's all I hope for our videos. And so it always makes me so happy when people recognize that. And they're like, you do you and you do your garden and you just like enjoy it and share it. And it inspires. It's awesome. I love it. Thank you for that comment. Patricia said, we have an arborist spray our crabapple and birch this year. Unfortunately, our bee population, which had built up as we built our garden with flowers, have dropped to 1/4 of what we had. Do you think that the spraying in the spring is killing the bees? It could be. In fact, I don't know if I should make a broad statement here, but like I think 99% of the problems that we have are from people using stuff irresponsibly, not at the right time and not at the right strength. I mean, even simply waiting until the bees are in bed for the night and waiting to spray until they're not out. I mean, the huge problem that happened with imidacloprid here in Oregon, that was like the beginning of the end for synthetic insecticides. It feels like that's like the notable time in my lifetime. I noticed like there was somebody who applied imidacloprid to blooming trees. I don't know what kind of trees they were. When in the hot part of the day when the sun was out, when all the bees were feeding. So, I mean, just like...
And somebody went and took a photo, right?
Yeah, and so there were bees, of course, just a carpet of bees dead on the... it was like at some shopping center or something like that. So some...
Idiot.
used the insecticide at the wrong time, and it ruins it for everybody else. Because sometimes
are organic products that you could use to kill the bees.
Yeah,
it's about education and how to use
exactly.
products. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you can kill a lot of people with water.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that water is bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't try to take a stand on organic or synthetic or whatever. In fact, I'm going to probably start incorporating more synthetic things that we have used that work, but showing you how to use them responsibly. And I think that education is key. I just wish people would pay attention. And that could be what happened. I don't know for sure if that's what happened, but that seems kind of like too much coincidence, or I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah. Anyway. Lori said, I love the garden. I love the blend of structure with the more wild planting behind. How often do you need to top up the water in that fountain? We top it up every day. We have to bring the hose by anyway because we have the lindens over there that aren't planted yet. And in fact, I decided not to plant the lindens there. We're going to do something different. So the lindens are now sitting over by the high tunnel. They're going to be planted on the new property. That's what happens. If I get put off a project for too long, like my mind changes and I'm like, oh, I'll pass on those trees. I don't really want them there. Anyway, so we have to drag the hose out for various things in that area, so we just top it up. Usually in the morning, if it hasn't been windy, it'll be down like this far, maybe. So we just give it a little bit of water. If it's really windy, I try to run out and turn the fountain off because there's so many layers that water's running down and the wind just blows it all out. So you wouldn't have to top it up that often, but I feel like it's good to keep as much cold, clean water in there at all times as possible. Heather said, I loved how you showed us the dirty part of the garden, not just the clean, pretty fountain. What about calling that area the Grand Kensington Garden, which I think is such a good idea. I don't know that I would ever remember to call it that, though. Would you, Erin? I just call it the corner garden. Like, that's so meh. You call it the triangle garden? Which probably makes even more sense than the corner, except it is in the corner.
Not like
if you pushed it a little further, it would be directly in the corner.
It's in the corner of the driveway, I suppose.
Yeah. Both of those names are so unromantic, though. The Grand Kensington Garden seems
or
like...
just the Kensington Garden.
Yeah, that might be the compromise, Kensington Garden.
Yeah.
Heretofore, henceforth. What did they say? Like dubbed? Henceforth. I don't know. Forget that train of thought. Okay. Nicole said, do you have your eyes on any more concrete pieces for the new property? We've looked at a few things. It's all so loose right now. We're looking at a massive something to do with water right now. I'm not really sure what's going to happen up there. Our plans are evolving so rapidly and maybe a little bit shooting high. Like Aaron told me, I told him an idea that I wanted to do out there, and he was like, usually your ideas make me do that.
Yeah.
But it's not bad to reach for the stars. If at any point we have to rein it in, which we'll probably have to rein it in, it's okay. But if you never reach for it, you'll never attain it, right? Okay, so next video was planting drops for fall harvest. What is that? Oh, crops.
What did I
Spell
write?
check, Aaron.
What did I write?
Planting drops for fall harvest.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Jody said, thanks for the inspiration to plant fall crops. Never tried it before, but definitely going to this year. Unrelated question. Have you done any videos on planting flowers for fragrance? I really haven't. Nothing dedicated. I noticed this year that while my flowers are beautiful, I don't have many that have a strong, lovely fragrance. I would like to take that into consideration for next year, but don't know where to start. I think that's a great idea. I will add it to the list. That's a good wintertime video, I think, to put together. Jessica said, do you feel like your fans are there with you as you are working? Yes, I do many times. Many times when I'm feeling like a little bit, I don't know, discouraged or something, because I have days like that too. Or it's just super hot and I just would rather be inside watching a movie or something like that. I remember the comments that I read about how whatever video was super helpful, or this video made somebody feel motivated to get out and do their gardening, or this video was this or whatever, or even hearing people's journeys and how they weren't really into gardening and how they started watching our videos and they've really inspired them to get going in the garden. And I remember those comments. I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep doing this because it might help somebody. I also think though sometimes when I'm doing something, I think, oh, they're going to like this. I think they're really going to dig this combination of colors or not. Sometimes I think I'm going to get pushback on this idea. We'll see what happens. And usually I can kind of nail which way it's going to go. I typically don't let it sway what I'm trying or experimenting in the garden, because that's half the fun. And maybe sometimes an experiment is a good idea and maybe sometimes it isn't. Margie6 said, how are you keeping the weeds from growing in between rows of flowers and vegetables? So we have everything scheduled hard. Everything is kind of micromanaged in our garden. In our current property, we have it zoned, so there's 5 zones, and every day one of those zones gets attacked for weeds, grass edging, deadheading, all that sort of thing, so that every section in the garden gets eyeballs once a week at least. And if you do that from the get-go, from the earliest part of spring, the weeds never become an issue. In the new property, we hand pull as well. We do have good help though, you guys. So we have Chris here who helps us with the maintenance of our old property. And then once I got pregnant and I got put on low activity, restricted activity, we did hire somebody to help us out just for the season. And so we have a man named Paul who has been helping us out in the new property, and honestly, godsend. Both of them, keeping us keeping us going, helping me lift things. I can text one of them if I'm doing a project and say, hey, would you bring me in 5 bags of mulch, or can you bring me some potting soil, or whatever the case may be, and they'll go do all the heavy lifting for me. And it just became necessary this year. It doesn't mean that we'll have all of that sort of help going forward, because I like to do a lot of the physical part of the job. Like, that's what fulfills me. I like to get to the end of the day and feel like I can put a check mark and be like I did good today. But it's been a really huge help for us this year, and I'm super thankful that we were able to have somebody else extra come on and help us. That way we're able to keep our schedule the way it is. You know, we've eliminated 1 day of posting on Sundays, which it's like lightened the mood. Mm-hmm. It's lightened the mood around here. It has really made us feel like we have a little bit more freedom, and then it keeps us to where we can keep on filming and putting videos out, which honestly makes us happy. That's what we like to do. We don't necessarily want to throttle things down. So anyway, but sometimes something has to give, and you either need to get help or you have to like do a lighter schedule. So anyway, it's been a great year, and yeah, that's what happens with the weeds. Boy, that's why I can't do a podcast. Hen Dog said, what about black tarp for the weeds? We've thought about it, and we thought about it like once we get that cut flower garden in the permanent space. This has been an excellent learning year, like excellent. Aaron and I were talking about it last night, and I was just like kind of lamenting the condition of some of my stuff out there. And I'm like, I don't know. Usually when I try stuff out, I have a fairly good success rate. But there was just like, I feel like the odds were stacked against me, and I'm always making excuses for that space because I'm like, well, I didn't have water until mid-June, and these plants, they just looked horrible. They were languishing in the greenhouse, and then they had to be planted right out in the really hot weather, which are all true. Those are all things that happen. But even though, like, we still kept on and we still planted them, some of them are looking awesome, some not so much. But either way, we're learning so much about drip tape irrigation. We're learning about weed control. We're learning about just how we would set up a space. I mean, just having it out there, we know how we would need to do things and how we need to get like entrances, how wide they need to be. All of those sorts of things are so good to learn before we actually set up our permanent space so that we set it up right. So the black weed fabric is something we've talked about. I don't really love the look of it. It's super practical. We've also talked about doing grass. Aaron, you really want to do grass. I'm a little bit on the fence about grass. Because grass, like I have to have grass mowed twice a week. Otherwise, I can't look at it. It makes me, when grass is not kept, I feel like everything else looks unkept. Like grass is a barometer for me. And so like it has to be tidy all the time. So I feel like we're setting ourselves up a little bit for like maybe 1 year we don't have as much help here and we have grass then out there. So you have to think about those things because you never know what life is going to be like or what life's going to throw at you from
Right.
1 year to the next. So you kind of want to set up your space to where like it's something sustainable that you can do yourself. And so like I don't mind the dirt paths except for it's so hot.
Yeah.
The dirt is so hot.
The grass would cool it down.
Grass would cool it down. It would be pretty. It would bring some really pretty color. But I also think like just getting natural tree service to drop off a bunch of wood chips would be a good alternative too. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. And the very last video, full July garden tour. We just put that one up this morning. It was like an hour long. We had a perfect day. It was overcast. We just thought it's now or never. We got to get out there and do it. Carolyn said the resolution and audio on this video are terrible. There are folks on this Facebook site that agree. Can you troubleshoot? I think it's on your end, Carolyn. I don't think it's our video. So Aaron said sometimes YouTube and Facebook will automatically set the video settings low, and you can actually adjust that, like bottom right corner right. Like
It's different on your phone versus on a computer.
There's a setting somewhere like along the edges of the video. Mm-hmm. So if you mess around and like just click those buttons to see what they say, you can choose a higher resolution. So it's nothing we can do on our end. You just have to fix it from your end, unfortunately. Nicole said, do you need to stake up your hollyhocks? I know you get some crazy winds there. For some reason, our hollyhocks stay fairly upright. They are coming up like around a bunch of other plants that are actually meant to be there. The hollyhocks just kind of like find themselves around or move themselves around rather in flower beds. So I don't really have any that are like flopping over or falling down, which is crazy because one, the winds, and they're so tall and top heavy. We should do like a hollyhock seed giveaway, Aaron. Oh my goodness, we have so many hollyhock seeds every year. Mary said, I'm sure there's a reason that you don't mulch in the new property. What is it? Right now we are focused on getting some infrastructure stuff set up in the new property. and there's only so much time in the day and only so much money in the budget. So we did the fence. That was the first thing we did on the new property. We had a well drilled. We had water lines and electrical lines ran on the whole entire property. We had a gravel lane put around the exterior of 2 sides of the property. We planted 5 trees, right? Was it 5? 4. 4 large trees. We planted the row of arborvitaes. We did quite a bit when you actually like list it out. We put in the cut flower garden for what it is. It's all temporary, but it's like it's set up and it's like working out there. And then this fall we are having the telephone poles buried. And that kind of caps us out for the year. So we will mulch when the timing's right and the budget is there. And we have a lot of soil work to do though too. So are you having compost brought in or manure? Manure, probably steer manure, aged steer manure. And we're just gonna have a ton of that brought in. And are you doing gypsum still? Or are you gonna just go with?
I think so. From the more research I do, the more it seems like gypsum is more of a quick in, quick out.
It is, yeah.
It doesn't like last in the soil, and so I don't think that it would be as necessary.
So we'll just attack it
It's
first.
also not super clay out there. We're not dealing with.
There is a layer hard pan.
Yeah, underneath, but we're not tilling down that far anyway.
Yeah, that could be a problem later. I don't know. We'll start in with the steer manure and like go from there.
Yeah.
Probably. But we're set up like all of the zones have been put in, so we could start planting anywhere at any point, which is really exciting. Isby said at minute 13:45 when you were in the Versailles garden, behind you in one of your neighbor's gardens is a lovely silvery tree. Oh, or a large shrub to the right. That is a Russian olive. Those come up wild and natural in our area. They're kind of a scrubby tree, but they're kind of pretty. They smell amazing when they're in bloom. In fact, at the bottom of the old street we used to live on, so my in-laws still live on that street, there's like this huge pasture full of them. And whenever they're in bloom, I'm like, it just perfumes the entire street. It's beautiful, and they're wonderful in cut arrangements too. They have wicked thorns though. Raymond said, will you still trim the arbs on the west side? You mentioned before that almost all of them have more than 1 liter. If yes, when will you do it? We have done several of them. We're just kind of like doing them a little at a time so that it doesn't, I don't really notice it being a big problem though.
No, I went and did a little trim on all of them, and it hasn't been too bad.
No. So I think what our plan of attack is just to take a little bit at a time and just over time kind of gradually shape the arbs up to where there's just 1 liter. Blake said, what's your fertilizer care regimen for your boxwoods? I've just planted my first boxwood hedge and I'm in love with yours. So I do Biotone starter fertilizer when I plant them, and then we follow it up with Plantone in the spring every year. And I typically only do one application of fertilizer for boxwoods, just because I typically don't get to a second one. You could come along and do a second application like late summer or even early summer if you wanted to, but I just typically don't. We have way too many. It would take way too much time. And I find that once a year my plants are pretty happy. And last question is from Petra. How's the espalier? Espalier sounds more like romantic. Espalier sounds like
you're saying it wrong.
Yeah, I guess. I've heard people say it both ways though. I remember you planting that in the back corner of your property. Your property is amazing. So I think that comment was like, I don't know how many of you guys asked about those 2 raised beds behind the greenhouse, and I didn't even think to go back there. So I think in one of the videos this week, maybe we'll just do a dedicated video. We'll take you back there and show you what they're doing. In fact, I just picked all the strawberries that were back there this morning. They're looking awesome. Everything in there is looking awesome. The hops have grown all the way to the top of their trellis, and they're starting to hang down from it. In fact, that made me think like I need to tie some twine in there so they have more to hang on to. Maybe we can do that in the video. I need to cut back the salvia, but everything is just like beautiful, looking great. And that is it for this week's video. Boy, that went really fast. I didn't even get that sweaty today. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope it was helpful. I hope you're having a good start to your week, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.